Hello and welcome to Muppetsational, the Muppet Show podcast, hosted by three huge Muppet fans. Join us each week as we dive into an episode of Jim Henson's classic variety show, now finally available on Disney+. This week, it's Season 1, Episode 13, and it's nice to see him nice, Bruce Forsyth! Yay! It's time to get things started on the chronological, explorational, conversational, Muppetsational! Yay! Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Muppetsational. I'm Lewis Chandler.
I'm Jade Turner.
And I'm Emma Chandler.
And what a joy it is to talk about a lovely episode of television. Don't wish to show my hand too easily. We're not playing The Price is Right.
No.
That wasn't even intentional. It literally, improv. It came to the front of the head, it came into the microphone, and now it's in your ears. Magic. Podcast magic.
Magic.
Or something. Anyway, to get back to some form of sense, Jade, why don't you give us some production information for this episode?
Of course. So, this episode was originally broadcast on the 30th of January, 1977. So, we're skipping quite far into the future compared to the little run of episodes we've had recently. And as I'm sure you've all worked out, the production code lists it as the 13th episode made, and therefore Disney Plus have included it as episode 13. Once again, it was written by Jack Burns, Mark London, Jim Henson and Jerry Jewell, and directed by Peter Harris. And, well, the majority of our listeners are from the UK, so most of our listeners are going to know who Brucey is. But Emma, have you got some little tidbits for us about Bruce Forsyth?
I have, Jade. So Bruce Forsyth was a TV personality, actor, dancer, variety performer, and basically his career spanned over 70 plus years.
Wow.
He started off when he was a child and he was known as Bruce the Boy Atom. And he basically kind of started off in variety and vaudeville, and then he ended up hosting Sunday night at the London Palladium, which kind of really, his career then kind of like took off after he hosted that show. And then, yeah, a bit like Lewis said, he was known as Mr. Saturday Night. He did Generation Game, Price is Right, Strictly Come Dancing. He was in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. He was knighted. So, yeah, he's had a pretty illustrious career.
He is such an icon and such a British institution. And it was such a joy to see him get to interact with the Muppets. It was so much fun.
It was amazing. And it makes me wonder whether there are other guests that we've had that maybe we haven't known, but are maybe more iconic in America. And maybe people feel that way about their episodes that again, not to show our hands too early, but I think me and Lewis are on the same page here. Like, this was just a delight from start to finish. And I do think Brucey did bring something quite different to the show than what we've seen before. And obviously we're going to talk about that. But yeah, he is such an icon, and Kermit's introduction really did set it up perfectly, didn't it? You know, he said he's one of England's truly great performers, and then described him as a one-man variety show. And that is Bruce Forsyth. He's a one-man variety show. You could stick him on a stage and you'd be entertained for hours just doing his shtick.
Yeah.
It's great.
He's a showman. It's genuinely like the dream career. What he has done, I look at it and I go, he got to present, he got to sing, he got to dance, he got to turn up in classic Disney movie of a 1970s, and just continued working. And I know he got a lot of criticism, like, near the end of his tenure on Strictly Come Dancing for being maybe a bit too old and maybe not quick enough for live television. But I kind of disagree, and his mind and his ability to just always be on is just such a skill, and something you only develop from doing those like years and years he did in Music Hall and at the Palladium. And, they build that into this episode when he helps Fozzie this week with his skills that he honed as a performer. I think we should just jump straight into it because I think there's so much to talk about. After, obviously, the introduction and the titles, we had our first musical act, The Smurfs, which were magical.
They were so cool, and they were dancing to the song In a Little Spanish Town, which wasn't particularly a tune that I recognised. I don't know about either of you.
No.
I was sort of enchanted as soon as they came on screen.
That's exactly
we had
the word, enchanted.
Yeah. We had the blackout, and then we obviously had their really, really bright neon colours. But I loved that they were sort of these tubey concertina-ing, I don't even know what else to how else to describe their bodies, but their little feet/hands and their horn noses, and the way that, I mean, obviously to start with, the one came out and was bouncing up and down and doing his thing. But then when that second one came out and was the smaller one, and their interactions together were really, really cute. And I thought it was really well choreographed and timed to the music.
Absolutely. The way the sketch escalated, just gradually you have the little one come on, and then the bigger one gets a bit disgruntled and hops off, and then two more come back on with him. I let out a of delight as more of them just appeared and manifested. It's deceptively simple, I think, because it's so entertaining to watch, and it goes along so well that when you actually think about the logistics of getting those 4, 6, however many puppeteers they were doing, because obviously they were sort of repeating the screen when they got near the end.
Yeah.
But to choreograph all that and know, right, am I going up on this one? Am I jumping over on this one? Do I scoot across on this one? I dread to think how long that took to rehearse, because it's something that seems so easy and natural when you're watching it, but that's always a sign of something that's been so immaculately performed and planned and rehearsed beforehand.
Completely.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really good, and actually it reminded me of, that little Pixar short, Birds on a Wire.
Oh.
When you've got like the little birds and the big birds, and they all
But I think it's called For the Birds.
Oh, sorry, the birds. Yeah.
We defer to our our podcast host who actually works in cinema.
I'm pretty sure it's called For the Birds. Yeah.
Okay, For the Birds. Sorry, yeah, it reminded me of For the Birds.
Jade, are you drinking wine?
I am drinking wine, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Emma. God, I don't think I've actually recorded an episode of this podcast with a glass of wine after we did our 2 practice episodes where I got too tipsy.
This is the first one I've recorded with wine. We had a bottle in the fridge that was open, and Rich was a bit worried about it. So he was like, "Do you want a glass of wine for your podcast?" I was like, "Why not? I'll talk about Bruce Forsyth and have a glass of wine. That sounds marvellous."
I love it. I love it, Jane.
Sophisticated. Sorry, Emma. Digression. Back to For the Birds. Now I'm looking at the fridge wondering if I want wine. I don't even know if we have any. I could make a martini. No, that'll take too much time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, sorry. I was just saying, it was just, like you said, Jade, it was so sweet. And they were like little fluff balls, and they were stretching, and then there was like 2 of them, and then they were all dancing and jumping, and it was so cute. It was just a really nice opener, because we have had quite a mixed bag of openers over the last few episodes. I thought, this is good. This sets a good tone for the episode. My hopes are high, and I just thought it was a really nice way to kind of like introduce it. It was quite simple, but just like effective and fun and really lovely.
As we got into it, I also felt like the opener actually had something to say, had something in common with the language of the episode as a whole. I mean, obviously, in particular, we'll get to it, but Bruce's first number with the bird and with other blackout lighting and everything. But just in general, it wasn't too zany. It wasn't completely anarchic and chaotic. It was featuring cute little Muppets, which was basically what we had throughout the whole episode. It was all just very in keeping tonally. As you said, it set it off on a right foot, but actually it's also set it off on the footing that we were going to be on for the rest of the episode.
Absolutely. We've complained before when we get an episode that's heavy on one-off or random Muppets that we don't see again or we just don't recognise. I never had that problem during the entirety of this episode because how they were utilised was so charming and so well done that I didn't mind that we weren't perhaps getting as many familiar Muppets as we usually would, because the puppetry and the sketches that they featured in were just so good.
Completely.
The little Smurfs, they also reminded me of, Emma, I think you mentioned them a few weeks ago, I can't remember in what context, the little horned, the actual sentient horn creatures from Alice in Wonderland when Alice is in the forest, the Disney version, where they just sort of waddle along and they're just a little circle with a horn and 2 eyes.
You're
and I was
right,
like,
Lewis.
Oh, it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
But
do.
I was like, it's them.
You're
Well, it's
right.
not, but it is.
You're right. I did find out a fun fact about the Smurfs, which was when so the puppet design, obviously they were developed over the years, but the basic puppet design of a Smurf dates back really quite early in Jim Henson's career. And actually when Henson was first approached about making toys of the Muppets, it was Kermit, Rolf and the Smurf, which were the three that were first proposed, but they never made, well, according to Muppet Wikipedia anyway, they never put the Smurf into production. I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting that obviously Kermit and Rolf are so iconic, and maybe a Smurf would be more iconic if they'd have put a toy Smurf into production.
Oh, absolutely. You get that thing into a child's hands and that thing becomes iconic.
It's magic.
That's how Disney makes its millions and millions of dollars. Merchandise. Can somebody explain to me the bitter duck?
I wondered that. Is that a dish?
Or did he bite a duck? Or was it meant to be like excuse my language, a bitter fuck? Like, as in...
Well, yeah, because I was wondering that obviously later on, in the talk spot, there was a pun about leasing a duck.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that a dirty pun?
See, that I thought that was quite innuendo.
Yeah.
I can't even say it now. It's happening already. Innuendo-led talk spot. So I wonder if that is true, Jay. I wonder if the whole duck thing is a bit of a,
cheeky nod and a
double
wink.
meaning.
Okay, well, I'm glad if there is another element to it that none of us got it and it wasn't just me going, what? So that's fine. If all three of us were clueless, then I'm fine with it.
The only thing I wondered about the bitter duck comment was like, and again, not to be, I don't know, but like obviously like duck à l'orange was quite big in the 70s. And I was like, is it some sort of comment on like, I don't know, 70s cuisine that we don't know anymore?
Yeah, but then they should have mentioned a prawn cocktail, Jade, and a Black Forest
God, they
Gatto.
should have.
Okay, but Peter and I had duck à l'orange last weekend, so...
Oh, Lewis.
We had a duck in the freezer we needed to use. So...
That sounds so middle class.
It's because Peter's dad sent it to us. He lives on a farm, and look, they have poultry. So if you want to know, make it really middle class, when Peter got it out of the freezer, he's like, I'm not sure if this is a duck or a guinea fowl. So...
And then was he like, oh no, there's no shot, it's definitely a duck?
He didn't. We just guessed.
It.
We just ate it, and it was very nice.
No, that was the only thing I wondered about the bitter duck comment, but maybe it was meant to be like bit of duck. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It was still entertaining enough. The puppet didn't really look like a duck, to be fair. It looked more like a goose.
Yeah, it was a rather large puppet of a duck for a duck, wasn't it? Sort of oversized.
Now, as this runner started, I don't know about you two, but I wasn't hugely keen on it. It was another week where we've got Fozzie being a bit of a sad sack.
Yeah, completely. I was the same. As everyone knows, because Lewis brought it up the other week, I watched the episodes twice. And the first time I watched it, I was exactly the same Lewis. I was like, oh, for God's sake, we're going back to Fozzie being a loser, moping around backstage. But then, obviously, you get the amazing payoff with him going on stage with Bruce Forsyth and taking down Statler and Waldorf. And so the second time I watched it through, I could really appreciate that it was all building towards that. And actually, I think this is... We've spoken about it a little bit already, but this idea that, the backstage business is becoming more entangled with the onstage business, and that also the relationship between the host and the Muppets is sort of changing and becoming a bit more dynamic, so it's not just relegated to the talk spot or to the dressing room or whatever. And actually, I did enjoy it. I mean, I could have maybe done with a few less bits of Fozzie being a sad sack around the back, because I think that's been well established at this point. I don't think anyone's shocked at that. But at the same time, I think it does build, and he has an arc, and he has character development off of it. And actually, it's really, really, it's nice to see. And again, we're getting closer to Fozzie as Fozzie, so I can't say I hated the runner, because the payoff was absolutely worth it at the end. And also, just to go back to the duck a second, I thought it was actually pretty clever that the duck said the punchline quack at the beginning, and then we had that payoff in Veterinarian's Hospital
layers
as well. So you can, it feels like a development of writing that they had the foresight to sort of be like, oh, we're actually going to tell you what this punchline is, and then we're going to still hope that you laugh when you hear it at the end of the episode. That felt like it certainly got more nuance than just like ba-boom-ch kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
like,
the prestige. It's the showing their hand before they do the trick. I never actually saw that movie.
Emma, what did you make of the backstage business this week?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you, to be honest, because when the first one sort of started, I just thought, oh no, why has Fozzie gone back? But then, like you said, Jade, I watched it again, and then you realise how much it sets it up for the whole episode and the payoffs, and also how he actually does develop over it. So I did enjoy it, actually. I kind of, first off, I was a bit like, oh no, here we go. But then as it built up and we kept coming back to the runner and the backstage, I just thought it was a really good bit of development for Fozzie. And also, it, like you say, when we get to the bit with Fozzie and Bruce, it was just so nice to actually see him hit and be Fozzie again. It was like a really nice ending for the runner for the show.
I agree.
So yeah, I thought it was especially compared to some of them that we've seen, which have been awful, where it's either just been a pun or it's been a really unfunny gag that's just been going the whole time, and we're just like, oh no. So yeah, no, I thought it was a strong one, and it kind of like, it matched the on-stage song and sketches, whereas sometimes, you know, either one can be weak and it drags down the episode, whereas I thought they both were pretty on par this week.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't want any more sad sack Fozzie. I hope this might be us closing the chapter, or at least reducing it, so it's more just a bit sort of like, oh, Fozzie, instead of like, oh God. It genuinely feels like Fozzie might be living in a box outside the Muppet Theatre stage door at certain points during this. It's like death of a salesman, sometimes truly quite unrelenting. So yes, hopefully he's got a bit more pep in his step thanks to Bruce Forsyth. Speaking of pep in the step, we might as well move on. I don't know where these segues are coming from.
Just pure instinct, Lewis. Pure instinct.
We should talk about Bruce's first number. What was the name of the song?
It's All I Need Is the Girl. It's a Sondheim. It's from Gypsy.
I have seen Gypsy, and I do not remember that song. To be fair, when you go and see Gypsy, you're waiting for, you know, the big ones. So everything's coming up, Roses and Let Me Entertain You, or You Gotta Have a Gimmick. I can't say that people go to Gypsy and say, see, I've forgotten the name of the song.
All I Need Is the Girl.
All I Need Is the Girl. Like, nobody's saying, God, can you remember All I Need Is a Girl? They're going, no, wow, like Imelda Staunton, like Patti LuPone. For God's sake. Look, not every Sondheim song is a banger, okay? Like, some of them...
Oh, I thought this was perfectly sweet, though. Like,
it's lovely.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's not top tier Sondheim in terms of like one of the ones you think of immediately when someone says, "Oh, Sondheim." You're not like, "Oh yeah, All I Need Is the Girl." My favourite.
When it comes to song and dance, men, it's pretty hard to top our special guest. So let's give a warm Muppet Show welcome to Mr. Bruce Forsyth!
Got my tweed pressed, got my best vest. All I need now is the girl. Got my striped tie, got my hopes high. Got the time and the place, and I got rhythm. All I need's the girl to go with them. If she'll just appear, we'll take this big bird.
I must have taken those pills. It'll go away in a minute. Whatever it is, it's a real one. I hope it's not a female.
I loved this. I thought it was amazing. I think it's the first time we've really seen where the host has had a number and then also kind of broken out of it and spoken to camera, but then also kind of carried on in a comedic fashion with the Muppets. I mean, he was annoyed at the Muppets, but like, I don't know, there was so much interplay and there was so much going on in it. I just loved it. And I also just love that it's called Gawky Bird, the big tall bird Muppet. And and I just thought she was beautiful. I want a gawky bird. Maybe not an 11-foot tall one, but I'll have a little mini one.
I wrote exactly the same. I put, what a beautiful puppet. And there was two of them. Oh, Emma, what did you think?
I thought it was really, really good. I think, like you said, Jade, it was a lovely mix of interaction with the gawky bird. Like, Bruce was doing his bit, then he was doing his bit to the camera, then they were having a little dance, then they had a little joke, and I just thought it was pure Brucey, to be honest.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
He was doing a turn, he was doing his kind of like bit, his routine, and it was just beautiful. And like the puppetry I thought was amazing, and it was just really, really clever, and just really, it just seemed really kind of like professional and really kind of well thought out. And, you know, we've seen some guest stars when they do their main bit and there isn't as much as a commitment there, or a bit like with Florence Henderson, you know, we just had the like superimposed butterflies. It was just, you know what I mean though? It was just really nice to see him interact with like Gawky Bird and do his bit, and he was just like loving it. You know, it was really funny.
I would love to know how much input the guest gets into a sketch or a song that they're going to feature in. Because as you both said, it felt so Bruce in the sense that obviously he's tap dancing, he's singing, but specifically the turns to the camera.
The turns to camera were so, they were so Bruce.
Yeah, so him, so sort of presenter, sort of showman, that I wondered, do they present that sketch idea to him and he gives his own little twist on it, or do they already know his work so they write for the performer? I'd love to know what that process is. I mean, it sounds terrible. I have the Of Muppets and Men book.
Exactly what I was just going to say, Lewis. I mean, it's funny you mention it because, you know, you could probably find out tomorrow. You could probably just read about it, you know.
Look, it's not my fault that I came across an apparently very rare Muppet book in a pile of books outside somebody's house in London, okay? And yes, I have not got round to it, but I have a lot of sad gay literature to read, Jade. Like, there's a lot of sad gay books.
You can put a pep in your step and break that up with a little bit of Muppets and Men, Lewis.
That's what my JFK biography is for at the moment, Jade.
Very happy ending to that story.
Well, Jade, it's one of 2 volumes, and this volume only goes up to 1956. And right now, he's just got married to Jackie. So, you know...
So what, you're going to leave it there?
Look, live me... With a cliffhanger ending.
I wonder what happened to that nice Kennedy boy.
It was quite a scandal, actually. That was my best attempt at Little Edie. That was not good.
It is interesting. I mean... To me, this has got Bruce's fingerprints all over it. As you said, whether or not it was sort of instigated by him or instigated by the writers knowing his style would be interesting to find out for sure. But it's so Bruce. And we haven't seen anyone else interact in this way, especially with the turns to camera. No one else has really done that. I would say Harvey Korman maybe tried, but he did not succeed in the same way that Bruce has.
His was more furtive. This was like... It almost felt like you could have dropped that into a Bruce Forsyth variety special. Yeah. And it wouldn't have been like, oh, Bruce isn't really doing much in this number. It's like, yes, he is here and he is in it. Yeah. He is the lead.
I also think the way that he was like physically interplaying with Gawky Bird was amazing too. You know, when he was leading her by her beak and getting her to do the different steps, and when she put her beak into his nose and everything, like, I don't know, there was something... Because, again, most of what we've seen so far on The Muppet Show either involves, like, the Muppets kind of nuzzling up to whoever the guest is, or maybe, like, a big one like Sweetums doing some sort of physical comedy.
It's just lots of hugging and being handsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas this was it was acting with the Muppet.
It was his... Oh, go on, Emma.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I was just wondering whether... he decided to treat the Muppets as audience members, or like if he was doing it with like a human, because if you think of where he's come up from and the fact that he's been hosting things like, you know, Sunday night at the Palladium and stuff like that, whether he decided to make a choice of like properly interacting with them, because like you say, it's either been they've been nuzzling up or cuddling or, you know, swaying along with them, whereas I feel like Bruce actively, like you said, his bits with Gawky Birds and like the dancing, and I quite like the bit where he was trying to get her to reverse and like left hand down, and you know, it was just really clever.
Emma, you're right, Bruce is very good at manhandling guests. He used to do that on game shows, like he would get them into the right position, like he would do the same on Strictly. It is another skill to his bow. It was the effort that he would be using with Gawky Bird that really sold it. It wasn't like he was overselling, I'm pulling this bird, or like it was all perfectly measured. Maybe it's his training as a dancer, or actually it might be because just Gawky Bird is a very substantial puppet that you really can put that kind of effort in. But it never felt fake or false.
No, it didn't at all. It didn't feel fake at all. It felt like he was getting that enormous bird to move through a mixture of his physicality, but also through his gentle coaxing. Yeah. It just was 100% believable, 100% right, completely entertaining. An absolute delight when he started tap dancing and Gawky Bird then joined in. And then the button on the end of it when the other one turned up and then he started yelling Mr. Hitchcock. I was like, that's amazing. Like, I don't feel like we've had that many kind of pop culture references in the show so far. We've had hints at them here or there, but this was a very pop culture heavy show. Starting with him yelling Mr. Hitchcock was just like, oh, Bruce, you're a star. I love you.
I feel like we could talk about this one sketch all day, but we should move on. Although you're mentioning that now makes me wonder. I wonder if Tippi Hedren would ever be able to do a sketch with Muppet birds, or is that too much trauma attached?
That was specifically written into every contract she had, regardless of whether it involved the Muppets or not, was no birds, Muppet or otherwise. No birds. Poor Tippi.
Oh, poor Tippi. We get a little bit more backstage business, but I feel like we've already covered that. So the next up is Strictly Come Ballroom. Ba ba da ba 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 da ba womp. I wrote fine, okay, whatever.
Pretty much.
The only thing I liked about it was seeing the little All of Me Muppet at the end again. I was like, there's the nice little All of Me monster. That was basically it.
The duckled and the frankled, I was like, okay. When it was just one, I was like, no. But then they repeated the joke, and I was like, okay, we're leading in.
I couldn't believe they repeated a joke. Like, Jesus Christ. You've only got to do 4 or 5 puns in this damn sketch anyway. Like, and you're repeating jokes at this point. Come on.
I mean, if there was a weak spot to this episode, I would say the part 2 of the backstage runner, followed by this ballroom sketch, and then the UK spot. I did worry that we had sort of, why do I want to use this, blown our load too early?
I just thought you were going to say that we'd peaked too early.
Yeah, why did that not come to mind instead?
Because you're reading too much of that sad gay literature, Lewis, that's why.
Jade? It's not all just sad gay sex. The gay sex is the good part, and then all the other sad stuff is their relationship with their families. Or whatever war-torn country they find themselves in, or whatever terrible decade they find themselves in. The load blowing is the only brief respite from the otherwise sadness that is their life. This is what happens when we record in the evening. I don't know what it is.
See, I was trying to be sensible this evening. I'm not wearing sweatpants. I'm wearing normal clothes. I got too comfy last time.
It wasn't that you were comfy, Emma. It's that you were like overloaded on slightly too much sugar to make sure you had the energy to get to the end of the episode, and instead you were just like off your tits, like just completely.
And then spectacularly crashed towards the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I did.
Well, speaking of crash landing, look, another
Perfect, Lewis.
fantastic
Perfect.
segue. Thank you. The UK spot of the Hick Muppets. I'm My Own Grandpa. Emma, did you recognise this song?
I didn't. No. Did you
It
then?
was another song from Grandad's tape.
Oh, was it?
Yes, the same tape that had When I'm Cleaning Windows and The Laughing Policeman and Lydia the Tattooed Lady had I'm My Own Grandpa.
See, that probably means it obviously wasn't as much of a shock to you as it was to me, because as soon as he started bellowing I'm my own grandpa, I literally sat there and thought, this explains a lot. This explains a lot about the Hick Muppets. And it was, I mean, I guess, like, if you want to talk about technically, the puppeteering was fine, they were energetic, but my God, I did not need this in this episode. And the song was just deeply disturbing.
It was. I literally wrote down, ugh.
Yeah. Inbreeding jokes for, I was going to say Hicks. I'm trying to think of a nicer word, but Hicks.
I mean, bumpkins is the only other word I've been using to describe
that's
them.
a bit better. It's very, like, that kind of joke, it's here in 1976. You see it in The Simpsons in the 90s with Cletus and Brandine. It does feel quite a tired joke, but the song is a pre-existing song, and we know Jim Henson seems to like these fun little ditties. I wonder if this number made it to the Jim Henson funeral.
Funnily enough, Lewis, I don't think it did make it, but
Look, you never know. Like, that was a long ass memorial.
maybe it was at the after party.
As we say, look, not every Sondheim song is a banger. Not every hit at the Jim Henson Memorial is going to be.
Oh my God. Oh no. We're not being disrespectful.
Of course not. We're not being disrespectful to Jim Henson. We're being disrespectful to the program choice. I wouldn't want Lydia the Tattooed Lady at my funeral. I want like a sad version of Vogue or something.
Can you give us a little rendition of that, Lewis? The sad version of Vogue, please.
Come on, Vogue. Let your body move to the music. Hey, hey, hey.
And this is accompanied by a string quartet,
No
right?
organ.
That's what I mean.
Just
An organ, oh God.
A harp player.
Yeah, look, at this rate, I'm going to be dead before Madonna is, so she can do it live. I don't know if you saw those pictures last night on her Instagram. She's fully, age is now no longer a concept. She looks like she's auditioning for Little Mix. It's insane.
Is she, she's Benji Buttonsing, as
she's,
they say.
She's that, but the Cher version. It's like age and time are no longer a concept to her. Immaculate. We're going off topic.
Quelle surprise. I mean, I don't know about you two, but that is all I want to say about the jug band.
Yeah.
So we can move swiftly on.
I think that's a good idea. And then we slide into a kind of slightly bizarre talk spot, but fun, between Bruce and Kermit. And it was definitely like innuendo filled, I feel like it was.
Was it innuendo or was it meant to be absurdist?
Well, I don't know. I kind of wrote innuendo, but I suppose it could be as well, because it was just super random, because he obviously had the whole gag at the beginning where he was like, well, you can't buy the chicken or whatever because her husband's in the band. And then they did this whole kind of weird exchange with buying ducks and a rat and then the pig turned up, and then it was just like, what's happening? But then obviously you did have the payoff at the end where you had the fight between Piggy and Bruce, which got a little bit brutal when he went for like her little snout at the end.
I know. Like, sticking fingers in her nostrils is so visceral. Like, and her scream as well that she let out was quite intense.
It was like torture. Like, it was literally like, it was like, oh, what's the most vulnerable part of Miss Piggy's body? Her nostrils. You know, it was vicious.
And he like slammed her down onto the base of the chat spot corner. It was a real bizarre chat sketch. I liked the payoff at the end despite the bizarreness of the fight. I was a bit lost in the middle. Then the nude pig showed up. And again, we've discussed nude Muppets last week, but seeing that off-the-rack pig with no jacket on and his body being such a different colour to his limbs and face was very odd.
It was weird.
The discoloration was odd on the pig, I will say that.
But did you guys notice, after Kermit handed Bruce the woodpecker, when he then had to hand it down to get it out of shot so his hands were free, he sort of, I think, passed it to a puppeteer that was down there and he went, mind my leg.
Yeah.
And you saw this little bump up into the camera of like either the cover that was covering the puppeteer or something, and Bruce shot a look to camera. And I don't know, that sort of slight breaking of the fourth wall without breaking laughing, but giving you a knowing look of like, oh, isn't this all a bit of a lark? It was letting you in on the secret. It's the best kind of fourth wall breaking. Sometimes you think like, oh, when an actor cracks up, oh, that's really great. But actually that gets quite tiring after a while. But that little glint in your eye of like, oh, we are all just playing here. Oh, sumptuous.
And also, maybe you could read it as another little bit of innuendo as well. Just in like,
oh, yeah.
There's a man down there, like under my leg. Like, that's just a fact right now, you know?
Chance to be a fine thing.
The other thing that I thought you were going to mention as well, Lewis, was obviously the duck got handed to Bruce and sat on his lap for a second, and that happened in one shot. So it was only a couple of seconds because then it cut away, but there was a couple of seconds where the duck was lifeless, sat on Bruce's lap, which was totally fine because it literally was only a couple of seconds, but it obviously was a bit funny because it was just like this unsentient duck sat on his lap.
I didn't clock that at all. I did not notice that. I think I was too swept up in the other barnyard animals.
To be fair, there was a lot of other stuff going on, but I just noticed that when the duck came over, obviously the puppeteer did not come over with the duck. So... I didn't mind the absurdism of this. I think because the Muppets so often trade in this kind of, you know, what starts as wordplay in terms of Bruce saying like, oh, I'll buy the fact of something, and then I'll buy the chicken as well. And I didn't mind that it was sort of, again, playing on the fact that the Muppet Show is filled with all of these different animals. I suppose there was like the twist that Miss Piggy turned up because she turned up so late in the sketch. I feel like that was sort of a bit of a difference compared to, especially, you know, normally in the TalkSport, Kermit starts talking to the guest and then pretty quickly Fozzie, Piggy, whoever rocks up, don't they? With this one, it was like we had a whole sketch play out and then Miss Piggy turned up to put the little extra bit of fun on the end of it.
A lot of the familiar sketches ran longer this week. So the chat sketch did. Obviously, Fozzie's stand-up did because it was Brucey, then Fozzie. But I liked that. It made it feel different because watching this as we are, as a podcast, analysing the show, you start to know the formula. You know when the ballroom sketch is going to turn up. You know when the second song is going to be scheduled. So when suddenly, oh, this is going a bit further. Oh, they've just come in now. Oh, that's how... I don't mind it. And it was done well. You know, as long as it's done well, go for it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and also I noticed that depending on the quality of the guest, it kind of depends how many songs and sketches are in an episode, because with this one, like in comparison to some of them where it's literally like everything's about 2 or 1 minute long and it's like boom, 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 because obviously a lot of it is like filler or they've got a guest that can't really do anything, you know, whereas this one, like you say, a lot of the sketches do run on, which is really, really nice to see. And it obviously shows that they have confidence in him as a guest host and also within his spots itself, because there isn't as much filler in this episode.
For sure.
Just want to give a little shout out before we move on that when Miss Piggy comes on Outraged, she says something about offending the whole of Porkdom, and I just thought that was great.
It's another thing. They keep making reference to Piggy being a pig, which they just don't do now.
No.
And I wonder how much longer they'll do it for. I guess we'll see.
She no longer represents Porkdom. She's just a Hollywood star now.
Yeah. I know we've already covered the backstage, but just the little moments of Fozzie fainting in the 2 backstage bits we have, and having Gonzo making his only appearance of the episode, but also the duck, again, who seems to be just on their own secondary runner through this episode, saying, cute bit, or cute fall. And poor Hilda just never being ready to catch Fozzie. I very much enjoyed.
I think this is the first time that we've heard it, but there was the use of the sound from the audience when Kermit told Fozzie that he wasn't going on. I think it's the first time we've heard something other than just the laugh track from the audience. And again, made me really did they show this to an audience and then like get their reaction to it? No, because it was just so cute and it just felt so right. And, you know, I don't want to talk about the laugh track again, but like I really liked it. I thought it was a really, really nice touch.
Tell you what, when you can get an awe from an audience, you've got them in the palm of your goddamn hand. There was, not to become old actor tells stories about the time he was on stage, but when I was on tour, I was in the Mousetrap, the Agatha Christie play, and there was a moment where my character gets accused of being the murderer. I'm not confirming who is or isn't the murderer. And on a couple of occasions, I got like a cacophony of middle-aged to pension-aged women all just go, oh, at my character being accused of a murderer. And I would look at my other cast members on stage and they'd be like, for fuck's sake. You know, I'd be like, yes, I've got them. Somebody who doesn't deserve any kind of reaction ever would be Wayne and Wanda, who again I feel like we shouldn't even bother talking about much because it was just another lame sketch.
I would like to just say that I liked Wanda's green sparkly top, but other than that I'm
Fine.
happy to move
The tree
on.
should have fallen down faster. It should have crushed his face. It wasn't good enough. And I want Sam the Eagle to be freed from this hosting.
It's coming, Lewis. It's coming. We're on the back stretch of this first season now. You know, we're counting down to Sam the Eagle spreading his wings and being
Nice.
free of the fine people, the church-going
decent people. That was the one.
Yeah.
Maybe he's invested in them. Maybe he's their manager.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe he's invested in all the things that go wrong for them. So he's got a vested interest in continuing to go wrong. I don't know.
So he's a masochist.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know.
Well, thankfully, Wayne and Wanda get cleared off the stage pretty quickly, despite the detritus from the tree. And then after the brief other backstage bit where Fozzie finds out that Bruce is going on, we then cut to Bruce on stage doing his routine for... I mean, I guess the audience are meant to be there, but he's essentially doing it for Statler and Waldorf, isn't he? Especially at the beginning, where it's all just Bruce trying to one-up Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, it's you'd be slightly peeved if you were in the audience and you're like, we are also here. We paid Muppet money to be here.
Presumably more than Statler and Waldorf, seeing as they seem to have some sort of season ticket.
Well, look, I don't know how much those boxes go for. I've never inquired.
Can we just talk about what Bruce was wearing in this sketch before we fully get into it? Because
it was fully horrendous, and I know I've had some questionable taste in both your eyes, but you know, I have great taste in fashion. But this was a disgusting. Shut up, Emma. Just because your camera isn't working doesn't mean I can't tell when you're like raising an eyebrow, Emma. This was a disgusting ensemble. The blue floral shirt, which was open a bit too much, and the necklace that just, and the jacket that was in 6 different shades of blue, and God bless him, Bruce's hair with this kind of
my life.
Wiry, two-tone, multi-layered feather, kind of crispy. It was, I felt like I could smell the cigarette
Yes.
smoke on him.
Yeah. For me, what kind of made me really chuckle about the outfit was I was immediately drawn to the ruffles on the shirts and obviously the check of the jacket. And then I realised that he was wearing that god-awful necklace. And then on top of that, I realised he had a bracelet on. And I was just like, oh, there's so many layers of terrible here. Just stop. Please stop.
What is it that the Nazi sympathiser Coco Chanel used to say? Before you leave the house, look in the mirror and take off one accessory or item. He should have just taken it all off and started all over again.
All of it. And he should have definitely redone his hair.
Yeah, that was... it was quite something. Emma, what did you think of this sketch?
It's funny you should say that about his outfit, because I just thought it was very 70s, very
completely.
era specific. Definitely, if you just saw a picture of that, you'd be like, yep, that is 70s. But no, I thought it was quite good. I mean, obviously, like you say, we start off with Bruce kind of heckling Statler and Waldorf, which is quite funny. And then obviously sort of Fozzie then comes out and starts and is a bit slow and doesn't really get it and is throwing out these one-liners, but it's not really working. And then obviously Bruce kind of starts to like coach him and egg him on. And then Fozzie goes crazy. He goes for the jugular. He like pounces on Statler and Waldorf. He goes absolutely mad, but I love it. And then we kind of segue into them doing the little number side by side, which I thought was delightful.
You did it, Fozzie!
I did it! Bruce, I did it! Oh, I did it! I did it! Oh, Bruce, oh, this is the happiest moment of my life. Oh, just learning from a pro like you. Working side by side with one of the greats.
You even learned how to cue the big musical finish to the comedy spot. You did?
Yeah? Yeah. All right.
Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money.
Maybe we're ragged and funny, but we travel along, singing a song. Thank you, Mr. Forsyth.
It's my pleasure, Mr. Bear.
Hey,
We're traveling along, singing a song, side by side. Yes, keep
thank you. Thank you.
I don't know what you guys thought about that bit.
I know that song, but I know it from the Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle movie. Which I know is obviously not its original incarnation. Jade, do you know what the origin of this song is? Because I knew the words.
Yeah, so it's from the 20s, and like tons and tons of people have covered it. Everyone from Pat Boone, Brenda Lee, Paul Anka, Ray Charles, Dean Martin, Patsy Cline. Apparently Bruce Willis did it for the soundtrack of one of his films.
Christ.
The Osmond brothers have done it. I mean, just... I think it's just considered a real standard at this point.
But it was lovely. The whole build of the sketch, and Fozzie going mad with power was lovely, and Bruce having to like coax him background to be like, maybe don't insult your audience, and also me who is here helping you. It was great, and just to see Fozzie win, it did make the backstage runner that I wasn't too keen on worth the payoff. I don't want it again, but
no.
Just this once, I will have it.
I think there was also some really nice interplay with Statler and Waldorf as well, because of the fact that Bruce had the upper hand and then Fozzie was getting the upper hand. It was nice to see them sort of cowering and being kind of taken aback and not having that kind of cocksuredness of haha, we're heckling and winning here. Bruce got some real zingers in there. The one about, oh, you must have a great sense of humor because I saw your wife. I was like, oh, that's a low blow, Bruce.
Which weirdly I now in my head feel is non-canonical. I've fully committed to the concept that Statler and Waldorf are gay lovers. Like, the internet has truly just convinced me on this matter that I was like, well, if he does have a wife, it's a beard, and it's a loveless marriage. So maybe it's a marriage of convenience. Maybe there's two elderly lesbian Muppets out somewhere. What are they watching? I don't know. Like if Statler and Waldorf are at the theatre, Mrs. Statler and Mrs. Waldorf are probably off watching a baseball game.
It was really fun. And to finish with the song as well, I mean... So does that mean... Oh, I guess the talk spot didn't. But Bruce had 3 songs in this episode. Like, that's amazing. That's, like... And considering they packed all the rest of it in too, there was still lots of humour and there were, sketches like this in there as well. Like, that's kind of incredible, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Emma, I assume you must have been overjoyed when we got the pipe organ... theme that introduces your favourite sketch every week, Veterinarian's Hospital.
Yay, they're back. I was so excited. I love this bit so much. It's literally my favourite reoccurring sketch. It's so good. I love the fact that we begin with like Piggy in the corner, like having a drink, realising she's on, throwing it off, and then she like...
Was she having a drink or was she huffing gas?
That's what I wasn't sure
maybe
either.
It was huffing gas.
Because it did look a bit like a wine glass. I actually skipped back I don't watch the episode twice because I've got a life. But I did skip back that 15 seconds just to see. And I couldn't be sure whether she was drinking or huffing some sort of, gas of some kind. But I did love it. And her quick chucking it down. It was very Acorn Antiques.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then obviously the duck returned again.
Yeah.
And that played the basis of all the gags between Dr. Bob and Janice and Miss Piggy. But it was good. It was really funny. And I know the whole kind of duck joke could get a bit tiresome, but I think they played it just about right, to be honest.
They did. It was patter, but it's patter done right. And I don't mind it when it's done well. And I think when it's on stage and not part of the backstage, because this to me was so much fun. Loved it. And anything where you've got 3 Muppets ducking down, coming back up again, anything that's got a bit of physicality and energy, it heightens the patter anyway, and so it all feels a bit ludicrous and silly. So then it's fine. If you have patter where you'll just have 2 people standing backstage having a conversation, then it falls flat for me.
I think it worked really nicely, and I also think, I don't think they looked around when the man's voice came on at the end, but every time after they ducked down, they then, when they came back up, looked around as if to say, who's telling us to duck? And I just love the idea that Dr. Bob and his nurses are constantly hearing voices. I just think that's hysterical. They're just like, oh my God, there's always another presence in this operating theatre. We just can't escape it.
It's actually the veterinarian's hospital in Twin Peaks. It's
Yes.
in this small town. It's just everybody's slowly losing their mind.
And then it wasn't that it made me laugh out loud when the duck said quack, when Dr. Bob said, what type of doctor am I? But I was like, oh, that's clever.
It is.
I do think it's clever writing that you hear quack at the start of the episode, you don't think anything of it, you just think, oh, the duck's just saying quack. Great punchline. But actually, to have it then some semblance of payoff to that at the end. Like you said, Lewis, the duck is the sea runner of this episode, and this must be the first time we've had a sea runner of an episode.
It's like, in 30 Rock, the A plot is Liz and Jack, the B plot is Tracy and Jenna, and now we've got a Kenneth. We've got the C plot running through, and it's a duck. But yeah, it was a super fun sketch, and I'm annoyed at myself for not seeing what the final joke was going to be, that the duck would call the doctor a quack. Boom, classic. Harvard Lampoon. Do you know what I mean? Oh my God, there are so many sirens tonight. I don't know what is going on.
Duck, Lewis, duck.
I feel like my door's going to get raided.
God.
Someone's going down. Anyway, then we get to the final song of the episode, and good God, what cannot Bruce Forsyth do? I don't think I even knew he could play piano.
I know. He just kind of amazes me.
Let there be you.
Let there be me.
Let there be oysters under the sea. Let there be wind
And occasional rain.
chili con carne,
Sparkling champagne. Let there be birds.
small ones, huh?
Yes, that sing in the trees.
I don't want that big one back.
Someone to bless me whenever I sneeze. Achoo!
Bless you, piggy. Let there be cuckoos, a lark and a dove, but most of all, please, let there be love.
Every time he came on, he just had something new to show. He'd obviously already done his song and dance. He'd done his talk spot. And now he's back again and he's singing another song with Piggy, but he's playing the piano as well, and he's playing it to camera, and there's interaction, and then you've got the like pig chorus that comes on. I love it when Piggy was like, "Come on, boys," and then they were like, "Da da."
That felt
da,
so
da.
like Mae West, didn't it? It was just like,
Yeah.
See, I wrote down it feels very Marilyn Monroe, but then I was like, actually, with this pink backdrop and these pigs all in these suits, I was suddenly like, I now desperately want a Miss Piggy Material Girl.
Yeah. They've done that.
Yes.
Have they?
I'm sure they've done that. Hold on.
I've seen, there's definitely a picture of Miss Piggy surrounded by penguins in the suits, but I think that is meant to be a direct homage to Marilyn.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's done Material Girl, which I guess is a hard definition because that's Madonna evoking Marilyn. Anyway.
It's called Madonna Material Pig, like a piglet, and something else that's on the poster of it.
Holy crap. Well, I know what I'm doing immediately after we finish recording this podcast. Material Pig.
She had to have done Material Pig, as we've now found out it's called.
It was nice that Bruce and Piggy had seemingly made up since their fight during the chat segment that they would come back together to duet on Let There Be Love. And it was a lovely duet, having Piggy just like propped up, as is her wont, by a piano. And it's such a lovely song. It's giving me, again, Tony Bennett, Lady Gaga vibes, where you've got a beautiful blonde and an old man just singing a standard.
It was really, really lovely, and it was so well done with Bruce chipping in and having his little throwaway comments and things, and again his turns to camera and everything. And also, like, last week we had Piggy at the piano for the UK spot, but this week we've actually now fully got her duetting with a guest. So that just feels right, doesn't it? This feels Piggy, and obviously in the ballroom sketch you did still have Richard Hunt playing her, but other than that, you know, she was Frank Oz throughout the rest of the episode, and we got her doing a turn. And also, I think this is the first time we've seen this properly, she had a pair of glittery high heels on and
Lots
also
of those.
glittery tights. And I was like, this is full on Miss Piggy in full form.
They're recognising her as an asset. They've clicked into, oh, this is a really good character, and it gives us a lot to play with, both, you know, seriously and comedically. And I think after that episode where we really got Piggy fully formed, which guest was that with?
It was the Lena Horne, wasn't it? Because she wanted to sing, and Kermit said that basically Lena Horne was too good.
That was it. It's Lena Horne. And now they're like, cool, we've got this great character to play with. So obviously in the little gap between doing that episode and now with January 1977, they've obviously had time to ruminate on these characters a bit more. And I think, you know, coming back, and if they're trying to think of fresh sketches or ideas, having this diva pig gives you a lot of potential for material. And it's great to see. I loved it.
And that just sort of topped off what genuinely was a really, really lovely episode. And again, not to show my hand too early, but definitely one of my favourites of the season so far. And I also really enjoyed with the goodbyes that Bruce Forsyth was taking the Mickey out of Kermit. He was doing like Kermit hands, and then Kermit had a little look to camera as if to say like, can you believe this guy? Like, and I was like, Bruce just seemed to be having so much fun, and that even carried on through to the goodbyes, which sometimes can feel quite sort of stilted and a bit sort of like, oh, this is just an extra thing we have to film. But he still seemed to be loving it. He was still being Bruce the showman, and also just seemed to really connect with the Muppets, I think.
He has such a similar energy to them in that he is a showman, he has a variety show background, and as much as he takes his craft seriously, he does not take himself too seriously. Yeah. You're not puncturing any kind of ego with Bruce Forsyth, where with some other guests, part of the fun is like, oh, they're letting loose this time because it's with the Muppets, or, oh, the Muppets have made such and such look silly. Here, Bruce is like, I'm with my people, and they just happen to be a bunch of puppets.
Completely. And actually, in a way, rather than talking about a Muppety twist on things, it feels more like we're talking about the Muppet Show with a Bruce Forsyth twist on the Muppet Show.
That's the power of that chin, baby. Like, it pulls people into its orbit. I mean, it seems crazy, really, for us to have got to the end fairly quickly for us, but when it's an episode that we're all just so consistently agreeing upon, it's hard to find discourse. So I suppose we better move on to our most valued Muppet performer of the week. Emma, why don't you kick us off? Who was your MVMP for this episode?
Wow, it's funny actually, because as much as I do love Veterinarians Hospital, and I was going to give it to that whole crew, I decided that I was actually going to give it to Gawky Bird, because I thought it was just such a... Well, sorry, just in terms of the interaction that obviously the puppeteer and Gawky Bird had with Bruce, which was really amazing and magical and like reactive, and also for the fact that just its kind of whole performance and appearance, and it just really lifted that song. And I just thought it was really cleverly done, and the way it was kind of, it moved around the stage, and it just added like a really good bit of like colour and like cleverness to it. This was definitely going to be my MVMP this week. How about you, Jade?
So I was tempted by Gawky Bird as well, but on reflection of the episode, I felt like I haven't given it to Statler and Waldorf yet, and I want to give it to Statler and Waldorf this week, because this is the first time we've seen them show humility and not just be a pair of old queens heckling from the box.
So you're rewarding their personal growth,
yes.
like some kind of therapist.
And I just really enjoyed, I think they played it really well. They played the foil to Bruce and Fozzie really, really well. And actually you wouldn't have Fozzie having this character development without Statler and Waldorf to play against. And this is the first time that he's played against them and come up trumps. That's as much to do with anything, with how they reacted to it and how they took it. And I just thought that, you know, they had great patter with Bruce and with Fozzie, as they always do. But then also just seeing this other side to them. They also just seemed to enjoy the episode. They only had kind things to say about Bruce throughout the entire episode as well. And I was like, this is nice. I think Statler and Waldorf are actually having a great time this week. So good for them.
They probably belong to the same senior club as Bruce Forsyth. They probably know each other already.
Maybe. How about you, Lewis? Who's your MVMP?
I was tempted to go for the Smurfs, but I have to give it to Gawky Bird. It's a beautiful puppet. It had such wonderful characterization. The sketch that it appeared in was so fun and so well done. And I know I say this so often that it sounds weird, but I just want to touch it. I want to touch it and look at it and see it move around in a space and see those big flat feet slapping around and the neck going around. Because I think even in a non-black light, black backdrop context, it would be such a joy to see that. Was it 11 foot tall?
Yeah, that's what I read. 11 foot,
just
yeah.
being operated, even if you could see the people, because your mind would just fill in the gaps and be like, what a lovely big bird that is. It was wonderful. And the magic of puppetry and Jim Henson and just lovely, lovely, lovely. Where's Gawky Bird now? Probably folded up in some sort of box. I don't know.
I hope not. I hope Gawky Bird has a lovely big nest to call home.
Oh no! Oh, I can't deal with that image. It's too sweet. Oh, let's move on. Let's get to our rankings for this week. Jade, what are you going to give this episode? I know, it's really difficult.
It's really tough because I think this is absolutely one of my favourite episodes that we've seen, but there are still moments like the jug band, and obviously the ballroom is still, I don't even want to say it's bopping around because, like, frankly, they're not even really dancing that much. It's sort of lingering like a bad smell, as it does. So I'm going to...
If I was Craig Revel Horwood, I would give it a 2. Instead of Shirley Ballows, who just chucks out 8 and 9s like they're going out of fashion. There you go, a little Strictly Come Dancing for you there. It's not yet September, but we can still get excited.
So, to get back to my rating...
Yes.
I think I'm going to go with the same rating that I gave the Connie Stevens episode, which is 8.5 Mr. Hitchcocks. because I think this was great. I think Bruce was absolutely the ideal host for a Muppet Show. He can sing, he can dance, he's got the comedy, he's got the physicality, he takes the craft seriously, but he doesn't take himself seriously. There's all of that going on. But the ballroom was still there, the Jug Muppets were still there. There was just a few bits that didn't quite tip it over into sort of a 9 or even higher for me. And also I do think the runner, as we said at the beginning, I think I could have done with a little bit less sad sack Fozzie. He's established as that character. Even just a snippet of that would have been enough to know Fozzie's an insecure comic. Like, done. So yeah, so 8.5, Mr. Hitchcock's, and this actually fills me with great hope, especially as we move into the later seasons when we know that the guests get a bit more high profile and everything, and we know things like the ballroom sketch are going away, that there genuinely are going to be some absolutely outstanding episodes to come, because they've clearly already hit a stride, which is great. And it's just sort of small tweaks now, isn't it, to get it to that ultimate level. Lewis, how about you?
So, my mind is running on a very similar track to yours, Jade. I have decided to give it 7.5 Smurfs out of 10. So 7 full Smurfs and then one of those little shorter half Smurfs. And I think the reason is only that the runner, although its payoff is great, I find a bit frustrating. And there was that little moment after we'd had such a strong opening with the Smurfs, Bruce's first song, that we then had the backstage business followed by the ballroom, then the UK spot, that we fell into a lull. And really, even if they had just structured the episode slightly differently, even if they chucked the jug band somewhere else maybe, and I don't know, it was just those 3 things in a row that brought me down from this high that then meant that the show had to pull me back up there again, which it did. But that time could have been used riding that high if it had been better utilised. So I think I have to keep it below a Rita Moreno episode or some of the other ones I've rated just a smidge higher at an 8, because I felt that dip in quality. So I have to just sort of take it like that. But I want to reiterate how much I thought this was a wonderful piece of television and how much I miss Bruce Forsyth, because what a hero. What a gem. Emma, what are you going to rank the episode this week?
I've kind of gone for in the middle of you two. I've gone for a 8 cute fools out of 10 this week. And I feel like you've both covered what I was going to say, really. It was a really strong episode in terms of Bruce, his numbers, his sketches, his interaction with all the different Muppets. But it did dip for me in the sketches, like at the dance, and then obviously the UK spot and Wayne and Wanda. But overall, I sort of feel like it was a really strong episode, and there wasn't, like I said earlier, a lot of filler in it, like we've seen on previous episodes. So I think, yeah, this week I'm going to award it 8 cute fools out of 10.
Wonderful. Well, Jade, why don't you hit us with a little Muppet philosophy for this week?
I shall indeed. So this week, I'm actually going to read a quote from Frank Oz about Jim Henson. So this is taken from Jim Henson, the biography by Brian J. Jones. So there's a part in the book that's talking about Jim Henson's enthusiasm, but Frank Oz sort of goes beyond that. And he says he calls Jim Henson an extraordinary appreciator. So there's a long quote from Frank here. Many people see Jim as an extraordinary creator. I realise that I see Jim first as an appreciator. He appreciated so much. He loved London. He loved walking on the Heath. He appreciated his family and his colleagues and his Muppet family. And he appreciated the performances and design of a puppet. He appreciated the art objects that he might buy. He appreciated the detail in a Persian rug. He appreciated just beauty. I really don't believe that Jim could have been such an extraordinary creator if he hadn't been such an extraordinary appreciator.
That's lovely.
Oh, that's really nice.
And we all appreciate Jim Henson, and we really appreciate Bruce Forsyth. Oh, well, thank you so much for listening to Muppetsational. If you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, as it really helps spread the word about the podcast. You can follow us on social media. We are at Muppetsational on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. You can contact us at hi-ho at muppetspodcast.com, and you can find out more about us and the podcast at muppetspodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. It was nice to see you nice. I've been Lewis Chandler.
I've been Jade Turner.
And I've been Emma Chandler.
And remember to keep dancing.
Yay!
See you next week on another episode of Muppetsational. Bye!
Bye!
Our theme music is Peppy Pepe by Kevin MacLeod, and our artwork is designed by Charlotte Rudge, who you can follow at Charlie_R_Rudge on Instagram.